So today, our session focuses on community engagement approaches for climate adaptation and climate change mitigation. Because if we don't take people with us, if everyone is not a part of the process, any adaptation, any transition is going to be a lot harder and potentially unfair. When we were preparing this event, we asked Lory and Brian for their working definition of community engagement because, as anyone watching this, I'm sure knows, there are many different definitions and there's quite a poor understanding of what it really is. So Lory came back to us and said it's working directly with residents, with local government and partners, trusted groups to co-identify barriers, to co-design solutions and build trusting relationships that support informed, equitable, and context-specific decisions. So that was Lory. Brian said is the slow, patient process of listening to people rather than speaking at them, figuring out what the real problems are that they're facing and supporting adaptations that really happen in households. So I think these are take us a lot further into really grappling with the topic. But I think sometimes to understand what something really is, it's helpful to hear an example of what it clearly isn't. Now, the example that I had in mind is not strictly community engagement, but any sort of history experts will remember in the lead up to the Second World War, there was lots of work done by some of the major European powers to appease the war and prevent it happening. And in that appeasement process, land was given away to Germany from Czechoslovakia without the Czechs even being at the table. So they weren't even in the room when the decision was being made, which, yeah, they weren't very happy with it. The rest of the world called it the Munich Agreement. The Czechs called it the betrayal, which I think is very telling. But maybe a less extreme and more common example of what often happens in community engagement exercises comes from, it's a quote from a respondent in my own research on heat decarbonisation in households. And this respondent said, they have a paper exercise with consultation. They pretend to consult with the folks who live here, but they don't because it's already signed, sealed and delivered 2 years, 3 years ago. And I think that really sums up often what community engagement processes can look like. But let's come back to why it's relevant for environmental change and net zero. Because so much of the adaptations and mitigation needed affect people and their daily lives and their homes. We can build all these new technologies and design new policies and regulations, but ultimately these all affect people. So today we're going to hear from two experts working on how best to involve and engage people in the transition. So we have Lory Barile from the University of Warwick and Brian Cook. So Lory is an associate professor of economics. She is an applied behavioural and experimental economist, but her current research focuses on how people-centred and participatory approaches can inform policymaking, particularly in the areas of climate action and sustainability. Her work looks at how behavioural insights and incentives can promote pro-environmental habits and sustainable choices. And beyond her academic research, she works with the EU, the Behavioural Insights team, and DEFRA on behavioural change for environmental issues. So I'm going to hand you over to Lory now for a talk entitled Enhancing Housing Retrofits Through Participatory Research.
Thanks, Liz, for the lovely introduction and for the working definition of community engagement. I'm going to share my slides now and start with my presentation. Can you just let me know if you can see the slides? Oops. Can you see the slides? Yes? Okay,
yes,
perfect. Okay, so as Liz said, the focus of the presentation will be on community engagement aimed at enhancing housing retrofits. For those who are not familiar with retrofits or what retrofit means, this is basically related to energy efficiency, and basically the projects I'm going to discuss are both related to community engagement to increase awareness about retrofit grants available for people, for the local community here in Coventry, but also ultimately to increase the uptake of these retrofit measures. So the first project I'm going to discuss is called Retrofit Rocks. So this is a project that I developed and delivered in collaboration with the council, Act on Energy, which is an organization that I think is working nationally to reduce fuel poverty, and also in Coventry, and a local school in Radford, which is an area of Coventry that is highly affected by fuel poverty, and local artists. So before I talk about the project and what we discovered in terms of the barriers to housing retrofitting, I want to discuss the problem. So this is a huge, so the problem of housing retrofitting in the UK is a huge problem. There has been a recent report published by the Parliament that clearly states that 4 out of 5 homes in the country need to be decarbonized by 2050 if we really want to be serious about the net zero target. So this gives you the scale, of the issue and the problem, and why Coventry is relevant here. Well, this is because Coventry is one of the local authorities most affected by fuel poverty in the country, with certain areas that have over 50% of households in fuel poverty. So the council came to me basically and told me, we do have this problem that, the government give us some money to help people retrofit their homes, but people don't really engage with the schemes. And one of the main barriers we find is that they don't even engage with us. So one of the barrier, to engagement was the fact that the local community was not really responding to the most common information campaign that we can think about, like, sending flyers door to door, conversations about housing retrofitting. So, as a responsible parent, when we were discussing this problem, sorry, I thought, well, why don't we try to work with schools? Because I know that in the country there is also, a new strategy from the Department for Education that is looking at embedding education for sustainable development at all levels of education from pupils, to higher education. So I said, in this way, we can kind of educate the young generation, but also try and see if, children can really work as catalysts of change and can engage in these conversations with their parents as well. And what we wanted to do with Retrofit Rocks is not to focus necessarily to a specific grant or a specific group or segment of the population, which is what I've seen done in most of the available literature, mainly grey literature, because there's not much published on community engagement and behavior change in this space. And so we wanted to have a more holistic approach in terms of trying to, engage as many people as possible in this project, giving focusing basically on community voice, especially on vulnerable people, which are those that are most affected by climate change. And they are at the heart of this debate most of the time, but they are also left aside most of the time. So the main objective of these projects was to understand barriers, with obviously the ultimate goal to increase the uptake. but this is something that takes time. Okay, so I'm going to show at the end of the presentation some data which clearly reflects the fact that the projects were able to increase awareness, but in terms of taking actions, I think that, well, this was not the scope of the projects initially, because we wanted to test the methodology, and it's something that we will do in a second phase. I'll mention this at the end of the presentation a bit more. Okay, so what we did is with Retrofit Rocks, we did 3 different workshops. One workshop, 2 with the pupils and 1 with with their parents. The first workshop was aimed at introducing the topic with 2 groups of year 5, because we know from the curriculum that they of state schools that year 5 pupils in the UK should have covered, insulating material, this sort of thing. So we linked the activities, experiments, and the discussion to what the pupils really had discussed in school already. So the first workshop was more about introducing the topic of energy conservation and why it's relevant, and also giving the pupils an idea of how they could save energies in their homes. And then we gave the teachers a teacher's lesson plan for the pupils to do an activity at home, again, to kind of nudge the parents towards, the right direction, and tell them, some of the tips that we discussed in school on how to save energy at home. Second workshop was focused on the artistic part of the project, which was basically for the pupils to create 3D models of retrofitted homes. And we did this with artists, so professionals that were able to facilitate the workshop with the pupils. The pupils loved it, and so we did actually. And then we used the 3D models and what the pupils created to invite parents in the school to a workshop where we could celebrate the work that was done by the children, but also discuss housing retrofitting and the barriers to housing retrofitting. And this was basically the nature of Retrofit Rocks. We collected some data from this project. Here you can see some of the activities. So here we have the head of climate change and sustainability at Coventry talking about a thermographic camera, which basically is able to identify areas in a building where you lose heat. And then here it's me with the teachers and the student ambassadors facilitating the activities for the second workshop where we created the retrofitted homes. And then here you have the CEO of Acton Energy talking about why retrofit is important to the adults that we had for the parents workshop in the end. So, as I said before, we collected some data from the workshop with the parents about the barriers, and using also the available literature, we created a survey that we disseminated more widely in Coventry. Again, with additional community engagement, because we went to the Godiva Festival, which is a music festival that is run in Coventry every single summer. And we brought Retrofit Rocks there. We talked with 600 residents over 2 days and asked them to, to get flyers, but also to fill in a survey if they wanted to, where we identified, with the help of the parents workshop, 25 barriers. And we wanted to see how these barriers basically were affecting people's view on engaging with energy efficiency at home, based on the COMB-B model, which is this behavioral framework that is based on capability, opportunity, and motivation barriers to behavior change. And this is what we found out from the Retrofit Rocks. So it looks like, from the data we collected, it looks like that individuals are definitely affected by capability barriers, especially psychological barriers. So they might think that there are not enough advice, that they don't have the ability to kind of engage with the complexity of these the information related to retrofit, but also opportunity barriers, especially physical opportunity barriers and motivation matter. And if we look at the different barriers that we considered and we categorized according to capability, opportunity, and motivation factors, you can easily see from this diagram here that the lack of advice and knowledge plays a role, but it's also the tendency that people misjudge, the balance between the initial investments and the long run benefits that they can get from retrofitting their home that prevents them to act. And obviously, this all links to the most common behavioral barriers that prevent us to act when it comes to investment that have long run benefits, such as present bias, loss aversion, which leads to status quo bias, which means inertia. So people are not doing anything because they don't see the long run benefits from these investments. Okay, very briefly, because I'm conscious of time. So this was the Retrofit Rocks project. We then tested using, the insights from conversations that we had also in the parents' workshop from people saying that, different people might have different needs and they engage in different ways. We tested another type of engagement methodology to engage with the community. And again, also with this project, we wanted to learn a bit more about the barriers to housing retrofitting and see whether, in a different area of Coventry, again, highly affected by fuel poverty, we faced similar issues. And what we did in this case is we organized workshops and community engagement activities using a virtual reality tour that we co-created with the local residents that applied for these grants, installed, energy efficiency measures in their homes, and were willing to share their experience with a wider audience. So here, the structure of the workshop and the activities was exactly the same as the parents' workshop we did with the school. And so this gave us also the possibility to kind of compare, obviously, the data that we have collected. This is still a work in progress. We have done 2 workshops at the moment in Ball Hill, but we are still collecting data, and we are planning to replicate the Retrofit Rocks project plus the VR project with the school in Ball Hill. So we're still in the process of collecting additional data. It's not been analyzed, but based on the conversations we had with people, it's pretty much the same sort of barriers that people face. And here you can see some images of what we have done in workshop 1. So these are the activities you can see on the left-hand side, where we were asking people to kind of explain, what retrofit means for them, or having a warmer and more comfortable home would mean for them. And then you can see that the kids were actually enjoying a lot the VR experience. These are actually my daughters, and that's why they are in the picture. But you can also see that there were lots of adults in the room, and they tried the virtual reality experience. And here they had also a possibility to see the video, which is included in the virtual reality tour. And this was the second workshop. So the first workshop, sorry, we did it in a pub, working together with a community organization that is doing a lot of activities related to sustainability in Ball Hill in Coventry. So it's a trusted organization by the local community, and a pub is something that people are familiar with. And this, the second workshop, you can see again the activities that we did during the day was delivered in a church. So again, it's a community that people recognize, they are familiar with, the people that were there as well. So it's kind of a safe place for them to be. Okay, final point that I wanted to mention. I said before the overall objective of these two projects was to test the methodology and see if it was successful to attract, to engage with people and to better understand, where the barriers are, and increase awareness, and obviously translate this into action. So in terms of increasing awareness, what you see in these diagrams on the right-hand side is the data that refers to the number of views of the web page, where all the information about these available grants are available. And you can see that on the days of the workshops, and around the dates of the workshop, you can see that there's a spike. So this was for the retrofit rocks. The workshops were delivered in different dates, and you have the data collected. Sorry, I can't see the slide. Okay, and you have data collected in April and data collected in May, which were the dates where we run the workshops. And similarly, for the virtual reality project, we do have spikes during the dates where we've done the two workshops. So this is the workshop in June that we delivered in June 2025, and this is the date of the second workshop that we delivered at the beginning of October. And then I'll stop here. I wanted to share with you, if I still have some time left, like a little bit of the video, of the VR video. I don't know if I still have time, Liz.
Yeah, just maybe show us a quick clip just so people get the sense of what it feels like to go in a VR experience.
Okay. Did I stop sharing the presentation?
Yeah, you did.
Okay. I'm just going to here we go. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Small figure.
Oops, sorry.
I'll ask is, how has your life changed since implementing the retrofit measures? Like, what benefits have you noticed?
First of all, the money.
Yeah.
So I am making a saving. Before the retrofit, I would on average spend £10 a day just on heating. That's no hot water, just heating alone. The house was so cold, it used that I was fighting to get the house warm. So £10 a day was a normal figure. That was solely heating, no hot water, and the house was still cold.
Still cold. Yeah.
Still cold.
Yeah. So have you observed, obviously you talked about the, saving the money. Have you observed any differences beyond financial savings then?
To be fair, I've got a bit of a better outlook because I'm not worrying about feeding the meter.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about the house being cold on a warm day.
Yeah.
So it was getting to the point where I was always layered up. Once you get cold, you scrunch up.
Yeah.
You're always scrunched up because you're cold, takes you longer to do things.
Yeah.
I felt as soon as the house has got warm, I took off the layers, my shoulders are dropped.
Yeah.
My shoulders are not aching as much, so there's a health benefit that way. I'm not crunched up and aching as much. I just feel a little bit healthier, to be fair.
Yeah.
Because I'm not scrunched, I'm not in pain with my back.
Yeah.
So there is a health benefit. It'll be personal to everybody, obviously, but I found I'm not tense. I'm not scrunched up, hurting my back. My shoulders are dropped. I'm more relaxed. I feel a little bit happier.
Yeah, no, and you'll feel more relaxed.
I'll stop it here, if that's okay.
That was brilliant. That phrase is going to last with me. I'm not scrunched up. It was brilliant.